Okay, so Objective 6 of Chapter 4 asks that you solve problems involving percent. So, your book presents one way of doing this, and it is a good method. It's not the shortest method. However, I do work these problems a little bit differently. If you're interested in the way that the book works these problems, it is included in your chapter summary that I will include in your chapter 4 resources so that you can take a look at while you're doing your practice problems and before you take your chapter 4 quiz. So basically the book presents a way that in order to solve these problems that you set up a proportion, just so you're aware and you know what to look for. So you set up a proportion, set up the proportion. This will be covered in more detail in your chapter summary. That basically you take the part, which is P, over the base, which is B, and that equals the rate or percent, which is R, over 100, or is over of is equal to percent over 100. And I will show you how to work one of these problems with that method. However, I do feel that just looking at the problem and looking at the language within the problem is a lot simpler. It's a quicker method, and I think it's just less confusing. So keep this in mind. This will be in your chapter summary that I provide for you in your chapter resources and Blackboard. Okay? However, this is how I work these problems. So, excuse me, 6A says find 37.5% of 600. Look at the language. We want 37.5% of. When you see of, that means multiply. It means to multiply. So when I'm going to find 37.5% of, I'm going to say multiply, okay? 37.5% of 600. Now I need to change that percentage to a decimal, and we just went over how to do that. I'm going to say, we all should know that a half is 0.5, so I'm going to say 37.5% of times of, just change the dot here to an X, the multiplication symbol, which can be confusing, especially when you're using variables. But I just wanted to show you, you can show your work using different methods. This is multiply, this is multiply. But anyway, so we have 37.5 or 37.5% of 600. I'm going to rewrite that percentage now that I have it in decimal form. I'm going to rewrite it as a number. And remember, I'm going to go 1, 2 to the left, and I have, put that leading 0, I have 375 thousandths, or 0.375. Here's another way to show multiplication, is to put two things in parentheses. So I have 37.5%, or 37.5%, or 0.375, 375 thousandths of, multiply it times 600. And now I'm going to get out my handy dandy calculator, because I really don't feel like multiplying that out by hand, and I honestly feel like you guys have done enough of that. So I'm just going to say 0.375 times 600 equals 225 is my answer. Okay? Write that up here. Box it. Good to go. So on 6B, 6B says find 120% of 45. Once again, just like in the previous problem, that word of means multiply. So my problem is 120% multiply of 45. I don't need to change my fraction into a decimal here, but I do want to change my percentage into a decimal number, so I go 2 places over to the right, and so I have 1.2 times 45, okay, is equal to, get out that calculator, clear it out, 1.2 times 45 is 54. And that is your answer. And here I've shown how I've done my work, even though I used a calculator. Box it, and we're on to the next. So 6C says what percent? We don't know. Remember when we don't know what we use an X. We don't know, it's a variable. We don't know what it is yet. But what percent of, look, of multiply? What percent times 80 is? Is means equals. It is this. When you say the word is in a problem, in a word problem, is going to mean equals. Okay? So I'm going to say what percent of 80 is 5. And this is where the majority of you ran into issues when you were working this problem, is that you set it up wrong. And you said 5%. 5 is what percent of 80. Well, actually, that's correct. But anyway, you set it up incorrectly. So what you divided 80 by 5. But what you should have done is said that what percent of 80 is 5. So we don't need that percent sign just yet. We're just going to use an X. We're going to rewrite this, and we're going to remember that X is a decimal number. And then we're going to have to convert it back to a fraction. So X in this case, we've taken that off, it's going to be a decimal number. So X times 80 equals 5. I'm going to rewrite that just so it looks better. I'm going to say 80x equals 5. And remember how we solved this. You get the 80 away from the x, but we've got to divide both sides by 80. That cancels out. We're going to rewrite this as x equals 5/80ths. We can reduce that number by 5. If we reduce this by 5, both sides, numerator and denominator, so basically we're dividing by 1 in the form of 5 over 5, we're going to get 1 over 16. But remember, we need to put that as a percentage. So in order to figure out what 1/16 is as a percentage, we can just divide. We're going to continue this over here. We can divide 1 by 16. So 1/16 fraction goes to a decimal. You divide that 1 by 16 is equal to, handy dandy calculator, 1 divided by 16 is 0.0625, but this is the decimal number, okay? We want the percentage. What percent? So for the percent, changing a decimal number to a percent, remember we go to the right. So we go 1, 2, and we say equals 6.25%. That is your answer. Box it up, and you're good to go. And then lastly, 6D says that 12 is, remember is equals. So 12 is 16% of what number? We're going to rewrite that. Let's get rid of that percentage sign. So we're going to say 12 is 0.16 x. I'm multiplying that there. So we need to get the x by itself. We could rewrite this just for aesthetics and say 0.16 or 1600ths x is equal to 12, and then in order to get that x by itself, we divide by 0.16. That cancels out. You have x, sorry, I need to put this and not an equal sign. So x is equal to 12 divided by 1600ths. And then if we go ahead and use our calculator to do that calculation, we come up with x is equal to 75, which is the answer. You can put x equals 75, or you can just put 75. Box that answer, and we're good to go.